Yes, you can start, Prachi. You can start.
Okay. Okay, I'm ready.
Sanchit, you are on mute. Can you unmute yourself?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Uh, should I start?
Please.
Yeah, Sanjay, please.
Yes. Good afternoon to everyone present today. We are team number 344, and it is a great honor to present our analysis in front of such an esteemed jury today. Starting with the company snapshot, we would be Adani became the first Indian port operator to record 200 billion tons of cargo movement, while 400 million tons of handling capacity is close to one third of all India installed capacity. If you look at the typical import-export cycle, Adani provides wide range of services and is constantly expanding its service portfolio to become an integrated logistics service provider. If you look at the asset base, it has been procuring railway rakes regularly to address cargo evacuation constraints at Dhambra port, and it has acquired innovative B2B logistics recently, which is going to help it develop its presence in Eastern India. The assets are strategically located along the east and west coastline of India. And if you look at the flagship assets like Mundra, Hazira, Dahej, they have been performing well. However, the port terminals under PPP contracts like at Goa Port, Vizag and Ennore are witnessing low capacity utilization. The Yangon port investment is going to help it expand its geographical presence outside India. An acquisition of Krishnapatnam port is going to help it achieve its long-term growth targets. However, we believe that the success of Vizhinjam port as the first transshipment hub in India is going to be dependent on the government support and the other regulatory bodies. Looking at the cargo profile, we believe that the profile has rationalized over the past 5 years with increasing share of container traffic. The share of coal and crude oil has reduced, and this actually protects it from external macroeconomic factors. However, at the same time, we believe that the imported coal demand is not going to drop substantially, given that the private thermal power plants are still going to be using a mix of blended coal, and though the state governments and NTPC have stopped doing that over the past few years. Vatsal will be doing the industry overview and management governance.
Thank you, Sanchit. Moving to the industry overview, we expect the logistics market to grow in the future due to streamlining of GST, government thrust on freight corridors, and Sagarmala project, along with a national logistics policy. Basis the recent developments, the 5-year traffic growth projections have been revised from 9% CAGR to 2 to 4% CAGR over the next 5 years. The container traffic is the most vulnerable as 30% of the EXIM is with the COVID affected countries. We believe the capacity utilization at the ports will remain under pressure over the coming years. The flip side is Adani is the leading player in the private port segment. Adani has been able to consistently outperform the markets by being able to achieve high operating efficiency. If we see the turnover time of 18 hours is significantly lower than the average time of 64 hours at other ports. However, two government policies, the Major Port Authority Bill and secondly, Gujarat Maritime's board's recent decision to allow captive jetties to handle commercial cargo is expected to push private investment and increase competition in the market. In the SWOT analysis, it indicates that Adani is well positioned to take on the market as it has a lot of upcoming opportunities and is expected to expand rapidly, especially strategic disinvestment in Concor by the government, which shall be a game changer in the logistics business. Moving on to the management and corporate governance, the intent and vision of the board is long and strong. Well diversified board along with established committees bodes well for Adani Ports. Presence of retired bureaucrats, port officials in the Adani boards strengthens because the port industry is highly regulated. Company has till date not identified any payment dues, has no qualifications and adverse findings from the auditors. Now, Prachi will take over the financial analysis.
Thank you, Vatsal. So, if you look at the past 3 years performance and especially focusing on 2020, then the revenue has increased by 9% in 2020, but approximately 4% increase is because of a fair value gain because of a one-time infrastructure development and dharma. If we further break revenue and EBITDA by segments, then we'll find that the port business is the breadwinner for this particular company. If you look at the capital structure, then the company is well funded with an equitable distribution between equity and debt. Looking at the shareholder pattern, we can say that majority of its share is held by promoter, but one of the concerns is a large portion of that promoter's holding is pledged. If we'll study the debt breakdown, then we'll find that majority of portion is funded by foreign currency loans, thereby attracting foreign risks. The company is in constant efforts of increasing its borrowing maturity, and by 2020, it has been able to bring it up to a level of 5 years. Moving ahead with the solvency analysis, Altman Z score gives us a sign of relief by constantly keeping the company within the safe limit for the past 5 years. If we look at the equity and net debt analysis, then the company has recently bought back 2% of its total shareholding, along with a 30% increase in debt. But high flowing back of profit, which is actually greater than the increase in long-term debt, gives us a sign of relief. The interest coverage ratio in 2020 has decreased. This is majorly because of low EBIT. If we do the dew point analysis, then we'll find that the return on equity of this particular company has been constantly falling post 2017. This is majorly due to expiry of a tax holiday in 2017. On the other hand, if we look at the asset turnover ratio, then it has been constantly on a constant level. And in fact, the financial leverage has also increased in 2020, going up to a level of 2.35. Moving towards the liquidity analysis, the company has been managed to reduce its trade payable in 2020 with a decrease in inventory turnover days in 2020, and its account payable days has also increased to 41, thereby giving us a sign of relief in terms of working capital cycle reduction. If you look at cash flow from operation, that the company has been able to increase it constantly year, and thereby we'll find an increasing trend in CFO to sales, EBITDA, and total debt. In fact, cash and bank balances of this particular company covers approximately 95% of current liability, which gives us a positive signal regarding the liquidity position of this particular company. Now, risk and analysis portion will be taken up by Vibhor.
Thank you, Prachi. So moving on to the final section of our presentation, we first see at the various risks that the companies face, which have been categorized in a matrix on the basis of their potential impact and probability of occurrence. Materialization of these risks may have an adverse impact on the credit worthiness of the company. The identified risks range from the operational risk of overcapacity as the most significant risk, while the counterparty credit risk is identified as the risk with lowest concern. In credit rating methodology, we see that the factors which have an impact on credit worthiness and financial position of the company have been assessed from 4 different lenses using the top-down approach, starting with industry, business, management, and finally moving on to financial performance. Each factor in the bucket is rated, and then overall score is calculated on a scale of 5. Now here we see some of the key rating drivers that we identify may have an impact on the credit rating of the company. The green boxes here reflect positively on the rating, while the red ones drag down the rating. Moving on to industry assessment, factors such as industry characteristics, competitive intensity, etc. have been identified. We have assessed as to how the industry and the company is positioned with the goal of credit assessment. With a total weight of 15%, these parameters contribute a score of 0.47. In business assessment, factors which directly or indirectly have a bearing on a company's financial standing are considered. The ports are strategically located along the Indian coastline, and which benefits the company on these parameters. With an overall weight of 35%, this score here is 0.89. In management assessment, factors considered here are board composition, vision of the board, etc. This assessment is important as the strategic and functional level decisions follow the direction set by the top management, thereby increasing the likelihood of financial stability and progress. With a weight of 10%, the score here is 0.34. In financial assessment, the company fares well. EBITDA has been improving over the years along with sufficient cash balances, which shows a strong cash position. Cash generated from operations seems sufficient to service the future debt obligations. However, dependence on foreign currency loans brings forex risk. With a weight of 40%, the score here is 1.18. Upon assimilating the individual scores on different parameters, we get a composite score of 2.87, which gives the credit rating of Baa3 as per our defined rating scale. Accordingly, the company has been categorized as investment grade. However, we have a negative outlook on the company given the uncertainty surrounding due to COVID. Moreover, the assigned rating of the company is capped by the sovereign rating. Thank you.
We are now open for questions.
Okay, you guys mentioned that the cash and bank balance is adequate, and you also mentioned the pledged shares. So if they are comfortable with the cash and bank balance, why would they at all need to pledge shares to raise money?
So, sir, I would like to take that question. So, to answer your question, the shares held by the promoters have been pledged by them to enable them to raise the loans. But the loans raised on the basis of these shares have not been actually used in this company only, but they have also used in the other group companies. So, for that is why we also consider these pledged shares as a risk to our overall credit rating.
Okay, got it. Do you consider it a corporate governance issue? What I just said, raising money in this company and using for some other group company, is it a corporate governance issue?
No, sir, we don't perceive it as a corporate governance issue because the shares held by the promoters are being pledged. It would have been a corporate governance issue if the assets of the company would have been pledged, but the shares are the personal assets of these promoters.
Also give a color on the receivable cycle for Adani Ports. How has it been over the previous year? Is it improving? Is it worsening? What is it?
So if you look at the trade receivable in 2019, it has gone up to a maximum level of 100, but that was majorly because at that time the electricity company were facing some liquidity crunch, and therefore there has been extended credit. But if you look, study the annual report, it is clearly mentioned that in case if the credit time period exceeds, they generally have a range of 30 to 180 days. And in case if it exceeds, they do charge interest over that. And if you'll see, then in 2020, it has actually been able to bring down the trade receivable days, which again is a very positive sign for company.
How does this compare to Adani's competitors in terms? Is it high, low, similar? How does it compare? Have you done some analysis?
So if we compare it with the overall industry level, then the range that they have given in their balance sheet, 30 to 180, is at par with the normal credit time period that generally companies give. Moreover, the interest rate that they charge, that is also at par. But on a very fundamental ground, if we see the different companies, then there has been a kind of a similar trend, like Gujarat Biplab and all these all companies also did have a very high level of TR days in 2019, but as far as 2020 is considered, position is much better industry.
Does the company have any related party transactions in terms of its operations?
If we see at the consolidated level, we didn't find any significant amount of related party transactions in their annual report. There were a few small numbers in the report, but not a significant one as compared to their overall operations or the revenue.
Moreover, if you see the compliance related to company law or formation of some committees and all, which ensures that there is no biasness in the same, the company has been very much compliant in the same. And this factor also we have considered as a very important parameter while calculating the overall rating.
Okay, and somewhere you have said in your analysis that there is overcapacity and that's a negative factor. How do you define or how do you assess capacity or overcapacity for a port company?
Ma'am, I would like to take that question. So basically the general trend that we have observed that capacity utilization currently is ranging between 55% to 65%. But what we have seen is that looking at the traffic numbers, which is published by the Indian Ports Association, the traffic handled at ports like Ennore, which is a terminal that they are operating for container traffic. It is currently underutilized. The capacity utilization is close to 40% because they have a similar asset at Katupalli for container handling. And therefore, the ship calling is currently happening at Katupalli and not at Ennore. So this asset is currently underutilized. So similarly, if you look at Goa port, there are some environmental concerns because of which the coal traffic handled is low. Therefore, we believe that if it falls below a level of 50%, it is underutilized and it will automatically have a hit on the overall revenue streams of the company.
So at one stage you're saying that there is overcapacity, and in another point you are saying that there is low competition. I don't know how to marry the two. Second point was that, if you talk about overcapacity at the port, which means there's a lot of unutilized capacity, then the turnaround time in Indian ports is one of the highest in the world. So why is that so?
So,
Ma'am, yes.
Sanchit, you go ahead.
Turnaround time, it actually depends on the level of automation, level of mechanization that happens at Indian ports. So it not only depends on if there is a congestion based on more demand coming in and we are not able to handle it. There are evacuation constraints with respect to evacuating the cargo from the port facility. So once you unload the cargo, you have to find railway rakes, availability has to be there, and trucking companies should be able to ensure that movement is taking place in a streamlined manner. Similarly, custom authorities have to be a part of this process, and overall, there are multiple KPIs that come into play when the turnaround time is decided. Overall, if we see that the turnaround time of Adani has been higher when it is compared to the other major ports, the average number is around 64 hours for major ports, whereas for Mundra we see a turnaround time of 18 hours. So operational efficiency wise, they are doing pretty well.
So if in one line I have to say something, then it's not across each and every port that Adani have, but yeah, there are certain specific ports in which we are, able to find these kind of issues like the underutilizations.
Yeah, any further questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
everyone.